The story takes place in a lively city where the tall buildings sparkle under the sun, and the warm atmosphere makes you want to take a walk down the bustling streets. Inside one particular house, someone was busy with their usual chores. In the kitchen, a mother was carefully preparing a meal, putting her heart into every step. Her face showed how focused she was on her task. She chopped the vegetables, picking out each one with precision, getting everything ready to make a delicious dish. She picked up a ladle to taste the soup simmering on the stove. After a quick taste, she frowned slightly. Something was missing, maybe a bit more salt or a dash of spice. Without missing a beat, she called out to her daughter, her voice a blend of love and authority. In the background, Naeun, her blonde daughter, was lifting weights, her strong, toned body a result of her regular workouts. Naeun was sweating from her morning routine, which included weightlifting and stretching, all part of her dedication to staying in shape. "Can you go wake up your appa?" her mom asked, her tone firm but kind. Naeun glanced over at her mother, a hint of reluctance in her eyes. Not long after, Naeun walked into a room with a bright smile, excited to announce that it was time to wake up. But as she stepped inside, she was surprised to find a boy sleeping at his desk, with books and notebooks scattered all around him from a late night of studying. That boy was Yong. Naeun watched him for a moment, taking in the calmness of his face as he slept. She couldn't help but think how cute he looked, a thought that made her smile to herself. Apparently, she didn't want to interrupt his sleep and just kept watching him, with a mixture of tenderness and admiration, enjoying that moment of tranquility before the day began. Suddenly, Naeun approached carefully, moving with the same subtlety as a cat, and began touching Yong's back. The soft touch of her fingers on his skin provoked a reaction in her own body, making her face turn a deep shade of red as strange feelings welled up inside her. Naeun continued to touch his back delicately, and feeling braver, she slightly moved her hand to caress Yong's face. The texture of his skin and the stillness of his sleeping expression fascinated her, creating a silent connection between the two. The silence enveloped the entire room, wrapping the atmosphere in an almost magical calm, and Naeun, still blushing, continued to watch her appa's face closely. But suddenly, her expression changed, and with a determined gesture, she grabbed his cheek tightly and told him in a firm tone to wake up, reminding him it was time to go to school. They began arguing loudly, their raised voices filling the space, and the sounds could be heard all the way to the kitchen where the mom was. Yong, the protagonist, was upset because the abrupt wake-up had caused him to cramp up in his legs, making him writhe in pain as he tried to get up. Naeun turned around with a playful smile and asked, "What do you think of my new leggings? Do you like them?" The unexpected question left the protagonist momentarily stunned, not knowing what to respond. However, regaining his composure with a move, he gave her a slap on the butt and with a mischievous smile told her they looked very nice and that they should go eat. Naeun was taken by surprise by the unexpected response, feeling a tingle run through her body from the unanticipated gesture. Both of them descended from the room with refreshed energy. Yong led the way, while Naeun followed closely behind, their steps lightly echoing on the stairs. When they reached the kitchen, Mom greeted them with a warm smile and asked, "Did you wake up, Yong? Still a bit sleepy?" He greeted her with a good morning, then asked if they had slept well. Hearing the concern in Yong's voice, Mom looked at him fondly, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. With a soft yet cheerful tone, she mentioned she had prepared silver miso soup for breakfast, a dish that always lifted everyone's spirits. Yong was delighted to hear this, knowing that silver miso soup was one of his favorite meals. It had been a year since he'd moved into the house. As he got ready for the day, his thoughts drifted back to his life before the move. He recalled being in his old home, eagerly awaiting the results of his university exams. Then, with a shout of joy, he announced that he had been accepted to a prestigious university in Seoul. His mother and sisters rushed to congratulate him, and with a big smile, he proudly shared that he had placed second in the exam and received a full scholarship. He gleefully added that he had finally fulfilled his promise to move to Seoul and attend one of the top universities in the country. However, his mother, concerned, pointed out that the family's financial situation wasn't great and they wouldn't be able to afford his stay in Seoul. Despite her worries, Yong, full of excitement, brushed off her concerns. He was determined to seize the opportunity he had worked so hard to achieve. Days later, Yong arrived in Seoul, overwhelmed with amazement at the vast city. As he explored his new environment, a beautiful, curvaceous woman, accompanied by her equally attractive daughter, arrived to pick him up. Yong watched them with curiosity, still unsure of what was going on. Just then his phone rang. It was his mother calling. In a worried tone, she explained that Seoul was a large and intimidating city, and it would be difficult for him to live alone. She suggested he reach out to her friend Yuna, who lived nearby and had shared many moments with him when he was younger, to see if she could take him in. Feeling a little embarrassed by the unexpected situation, Yong turned to the women and, somewhat shyly, asked if they had known him as a child. The women exchanged silent glances, their eyes full of memories and nostalgia. Yong studied them closely, trying to recall any details. Suddenly, a memory began to surface, and he remembered that during a childhood visit to Seoul, his mother's friend had welcomed him warmly. That visit had left a lasting and fond impression on him. The practical mom, not wasting any time, grabbed Yong's luggage and firmly told him to come inside, commenting that it was too cold outside. Without further discussion, they guided him into his new home. So, unexpectedly but with warmth, Yong found himself living with his mother's friend and her daughter. Now, in the present, Yong was enjoying the delicious breakfast that Mom had lovingly prepared. With every bite, he felt grateful for the kindness and hospitality of these women, who had taken him in as if he were part of their family. "Don't you have in-person classes?" Yuna asked, intrigued, though she maintained her composure. Her daughter smiled and replied that even in webtoons, attendance wasn't required. Yuna began to drift into her thoughts, finding the new technologies and methods of studying quite complicated. With a thoughtful expression, she turned to Yong and asked how the stew tasted, wondering if he noticed anything unusual about it. Yong, always polite, responded that it was delicious, thanking her for every bite. The person in front of Jong was his mother's friend, Aunt Yuna. Although it was a request from a close friend, Yong wondered if she owed his mother any favor, trying to understand why she had taken him in so kindly. However, he quickly dismissed that thought, concluding that couldn't be the case and that Aunt Yuna was just a good-hearted person, always willing to help. Well, aside from being kind-hearted, she's also an angel fallen from the sky. Yong thought, admiring Yuna's kindness and beauty. An angel, an angel, an angel. The protagonist stammered, his eyes wider than soup plates, unable to look away from Yuna's generous breasts. Unable to resist, the protagonist dove into a sea of fantasies about Yuna, seeing her as beautiful as a spring flower. He drooled, imagining 1,001 scenarios with beautiful Yuna as the star of his thoughts. Nyan, sitting right in front of him, noticed within 2 seconds that the protagonist's head was in the clouds. Without a second thought, and discreetly, Nyan stretched her leg under the table. She made contact and started massaging the protagonist's lower part. The effect was instant. He felt as though he'd been plugged into an electrical socket. A jolt ran through his body from top to bottom, and after what felt like an eternity, he collapsed onto the table, completely embarrassed. Yuna, looking startled, seemed more concerned than a first-time mother. Meanwhile, Nyan, as calm as ever, announced she was going to school, acting as if nothing had happened. The protagonist couldn't help but think that his friend only resembled her mother in looks, as she didn't have a shred of sweetness or consideration. Nyan was about to leave for university when she suddenly heard her mother, Yuna, call her in an urgent tone. She halted, turning around, and noticed that her mother was holding a bento in her hands. Yuna, looking visibly nervous, started to stammer as she offered it to her daughter. "I made steamed chicken," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought maybe you'd like to take it with you for the day." Her mother's gesture seemed like a genuine attempt to show affection, yet the tension in the air was unmistakable. The relationship between them appeared strained, and this brief exchange seemed to reflect the emotional distance between mother and daughter. Yong, who was also present during the scene, watched quietly, sensing the awkwardness of the moment. He knew that, later, he would likely have to play a part in helping mend the rift between Yuna and Tun. Nin, slightly blushing and feeling a bit uncomfortable, wasn't sure how to respond to her mother's offer. With a mixture of gratitude and shyness, She accepted the bento from Yuna's hands, thanking her, though her words were somewhat hesitant. Meanwhile, Yong approached, offering a polite smile as he thanked Yuna for her hospitality and said his goodbyes. Just before he left, Yuna, still visibly worried, called out to Yong with an expression filled with both affection and seriousness. "Take care of my daughter," she asked, her voice tinged with genuine concern. Yong, smiling, promised he would look after Nin, though he wasn't exactly sure how he would do so. As they walked to school together, the cool morning air surrounded them. Nun, with a curious glance and a small smile, asked her appa if he had a girlfriend. She reminded him that the second semester was almost over and inquired if there was anyone he was interested in. As they walked, Yong, keeping his gaze on the ground, replied that he had been so caught up with his studies and adjusting to life in the city that he hadn't had a moment to think about dating. Nun, her expression tinged with disdain, reminded him that he had said the same thing the previous year. She advised him not to let his youth pass by while buried in his books, suggesting he needed to strike a balance between studying and enjoying life by socializing. "Isn't that normal for university students?" Yong asked, a little confused by her advice. With a teasing smile, Nan responded that while studying was important, university life was also about having fun, spending time with friends, and meeting new people. "University guys should have a lot of fun too," she added, making her point clear. The scene shifted to the university campus, where students walked in pairs along tree-lined paths. Among the crowd, Yong couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness as he noticed that he was the only one so focused on his studies, while others enjoyed their time with partners. Suddenly, Naeon's attention was drawn to a couple who had broken away from the main group, heading toward a more secluded part of the campus, hidden among the trees and greenery. Unable to resist, Yong wondered if the couple was seeking privacy for something more than just a casual walk. Hun, with a determined expression and a mischievous glint in her eyes, remarked that a noble person must always seek the truth behind things, implying that she was eager to uncover exactly what the couple was up to in that hidden spot. The couple, now in a hidden corner of the campus, was enjoying their time together. The scene was a mix of soft laughter and loving whispers as they immersed themselves in their small oasis of intimacy. The protagonist, watching from a safe distance, felt even more disheartened. The injustice of the situation hit him hard, as while others enjoyed their youth and love without restrictions, he felt trapped in an endless cycle of studying and responsibility. Yong was observing the scene with a mix of fascination and embarrassment, his face visibly reddening. Nan, standing beside him, whispered with a mischievous smile that despite the uncomfortable situation, there was quite an interesting view. Curiosity and unease started playing with Yong's nerves, as he wondered if it was possible for people so dedicated to studying to also find ways to have fun intensely, just like those now in front of them. As erotic sounds and moans began to fill the air, an atmosphere charged with intimacy and desire took over, making both Jong and Neon blush in unison. Nun, her face still flushed and slightly stammering, tried to keep her composure, pretending not to be affected by the situation. She asked Yong to stop watching and suggested they leave before getting caught. Nun noticed something that completely surprised her. Jong's little friend, which had been inactive until then, had woken up and was clearly reacting to the stimulating scene in front of them. The couple in the corner was so immersed in their activities that the intensity of what they were doing was almost indescribable. Jong and Nun were left stunned by everything they had witnessed. The scene was far more intense than they had imagined. Later, Jong and Nan entered their classroom with their cheeks still burning with embarrassment, trying to hide the deep blush that overtook them. They couldn't avoid the awkward silence between them and refrained from mentioning the scene they had witnessed. Thus begins the story of Jong, a young man who, by a twist of fate and unexpected circumstances, finds himself living in Seoul at the house of his mother's friend. The question arises, will he manage to maintain a calm and orderly life, or will he succumb to the desires and temptations that seem to be part of the dynamic in his new home with the girls living with him? To find out how events will unfold, and which direction Jong's life will take, you'll need to dive into the reading of this work. The story bears the intriguing title, Secret Your Mom, promising a plot full of surprises and unexpected twists. Before signing off, This humble servant reminds viewers not to forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive alerts for future videos. The invitation is to stay up to date with every new release and not miss any updates until the next edition, where you'll continue to discover more fascinating stories.